This is the new 2024 Chevy Silverado EV, and it's Chevy's brand new, fully electric, full-size pickup truck answer to the Ford F-150 Lightning, Rivian R1T, and Tesla Cybertruck. Unlike all of those, however, Chevy is launching the Silverado EV in a stripped-down base model work truck version first. So today, that's what I'm going to review, and I'll show you all of its quirks and features. Today's video is sponsored by Cars and Bids, which is my online car auction website for modern enthusiast cars. So far, Cars and Bids has hosted more than 20,000 car auctions of special, cool, and interesting cars like this, and this, and this, and this. So, if you're looking to buy or sell an enthusiast car, do it on Cars and Bids. All right, time for the quirks and features of the Silverado EV. Now, I've already reviewed a concept version of this truck, but it was just for auto shows. It didn't move, it wasn't operational. This one is a production vehicle and it's ready to go. And I'm gonna start with the basics. So, the Silverado EV shares its basic architecture with the Hummer EV, which is GMC's kind of crazy, muscular off-road truck, and there's also an SUV version. The difference is the Silverado EV is a bit more, well, tame, subdued. Let's call it traditional. It doesn't have the crazy, macho, brawny styling. It's also not a convertible. The Hummer EV has removable roof panels. This is just a normal truck with a roof that fairly well blends in. Now, the interesting thing about the Silverado EV debut, like I mentioned, they're starting off with the work truck, the base level entry model designed for fleet buyers who want to tow, haul, use it for job sites. That's different from Rivian, Tesla, and Ford with the Lightning. They all started with the top trims first because, well, they make the most money. But here we're starting with the basic bare bones model. It's an interesting strategy, and I don't know why they did that. It was either to avoid early competition with the Hummer EV, which hasn't really been out all that long, or maybe because suppliers and Chevy just aren't ready to make the top trim models yet. But in the future, there will be a top trim Silverado RST EV with more power and more style and excitement. For now, just the work truck. So what's the Silverado EV all about? Well, this truck has two electric motors, front and rear, which means it has standard four-wheel drive. The forthcoming RST version, the top trim, will have 750 horsepower, but this, the work truck model, is restrained with a mere 500 horsepower and 615 pound-feet of torque. That's just in the entry-level base model version, and it sends this truck from 0 to 60 in the low 5-second range. The really impressive part, though, about the Silverado EV is its driving range. Chevy says this will do 450 miles of driving between charges in optimal conditions, which blows the competition out of the water. The F-150 Lightning's maximum range is about 320 miles, so this is much, much more significant if driving range is your primary target. The Silverado EV will also fast charge. Chevy says with the right conditions, it can add about 100 miles of range in roughly 10 minutes. The drawback, however, is definitely pricing. Chevy says this will start the base model Silverado EV, the work truck version for job site builders, at $74,000. That's big money. The upcoming RST, the top-of-the-line performance version, will start around $107,000. Also big money, and mid-level trims in between the two will fill out the lineup later. So what do you get when you spend 75 grand on an electric Chevy Silverado, aside from pretty strong performance and an immense driving range? Well, for one thing, the answer is a huge pickup truck. As you can see, This is big. It's about 233 inches long, and it seems massive to me when I look at it, although it's roughly the same size as the Ford F-150 Lightning, so it is right there in full-size pickup territory. With that said, it makes it considerably longer than the other EV trucks. It's over a foot longer than the Rivian R1T and about 10 inches longer than Tesla's Cybertruck. As for a comparison to the standard Silverado, the styling is different, but not dramatically so. It's more rounded than the regular truck. It only comes in this four-door crew cab body style, and it has kind of a distinctive general look to it, but not so much that you would immediately notice it, turn your head and point, sort of like the Lightning. It's different, but not hugely different, which I think is what they were going for, especially compared to the Hummer EV, which is so showy and obvious and pretty head-turning when you see it. Now, also worth pointing out about this particular Silverado EV, it looks fairly basic on the outside, which is to say, painted in a simple white, and there's a lot of plastic for the trim. You can see over the wheel arches between the windows. It looks fairly basic, and that's intentional. Again, this is the work truck version for use on job sites, not the top-end trims that are designed to look cool too. This is supposed to be basic and stripped down, and that's reflected in its look. One good example is the wheel size. The work truck model has 18-inch wheels, pretty small as you can see. The RST version will have 24-inch wheels, a full 6 inches bigger than this. But for now, this is what you get since it's sort of the basic version of this truck. Now, one other thing you notice looking around the Silverado EV, the badging, the E in Silverado is blue. These 3 blue horizontal lines. This is a trademark Chevy touch on its electric vehicles. You also see it on the Blazer EV and others, and this character is featured in other spots. For instance, right here in the middle of the running board, you can see this distinctive E, sort of a hidden Easter egg reminding you that this is the electric one. And if you're paying attention, you will also notice the hidden Chevy Electric E also appears on the tailgate, obviously in the Silverado badge here, but when you drop the tailgate, there it is at the top facing back, the Chevy E. Now, since we're here, let's talk about the bed of this truck. For one thing, getting into the bed is not particularly easy. This truck is tall, high off the ground, and there's no bed step to climb in like there is in so many other pickups, including other Chevy Silverado and GMC Sierra models. You don't have that bed step back here. There is a little step on the corner of the truck integrated into the bodywork that you could use to step in and reach in, but if you want to climb in through the tailgate, it is rather difficult to get up here. Now, you can see that this particular truck has a bed cover, which I'm sure is there to add range. It probably helps the aerodynamics of the truck, which is why all of these electric pickups have these bed covers. This one is not power operated like Rivian or Tesla, but it is very easy to remove. You just pull on this red loop, it unlatches, and then it's basically Velcro, and you can just unfold it and take it off if you want. The bed itself is fairly simple, nothing particularly exciting in here, except over on the passenger side, you have this area, which you can see is obviously going to be power outlets. And indeed, it is power outlets. There are 4 household chargers in here under 2 of these panels. So you can plug in a lot of different stuff. And under the last panel is a 240 volt, so you can plug in something especially large, a household dryer if you want, and dry your clothes out at a job site. Given that this truck comes with 450 miles of range, it can probably power your stuff for a long time using this power panel in the bed. So that's a pretty impressive touch. Now, as for carrying capabilities, the payload capacity of this truck is 1,440 pounds, which is only okay, and the towing capacity is 10,000 pounds. That's pretty good, although obviously range will dramatically diminish if you're trying to pull something that heavy. Chevy says that a 20,000 pound towing capacity option will be coming soon to extend things even further. One other cool trick of the Silverado EV is a folding midgate that will connect the bed of this truck into the interior and the cabin, just like the old Chevy Avalanche pickup used to have. Unfortunately, this truck is not equipped with the folding midgate, but it will be offered, and it's kind of a neat idea, I guess, for people who want their bed to be also part of their interior. No, there are some situations where it could be helpful, and it's cool to see Chevy bringing that back and offering it again. And next we move inside the Silverado EV, where just like the exterior styling, the interior is pretty Spartan and basic and stripped down. Now again, that makes sense because this is the work truck model, but it's also $74,000. And when you consider what rivals offer at this price point, this is a shockingly bare bones interior. You can see a lot of plastic in here, a lot of vinyl, fairly cheap materials, no stitching, no high quality leather, anything like that. This is the work truck, and they've taken all that stuff out of here, which again makes sense for the work truck. I just wonder if $75,000 pickup buyers are really going to accept that this is what it looks like in here. Now, with that said, there are some nice things in here, particularly the infotainment system. The Silverado EV, of course, uses General Motors' latest infotainment, and it's fantastic. It's really good, excellent to use, very responsive to the touch, very intuitively laid out. The screen is not huge, but big enough, reasonably sized for this vehicle, and it all operates very well, exactly like you'd expect. And it integrates Amazon Alexa along with Google, so you have Google Maps and Google Assistant inside this infotainment. It's really quite an impressive package that works very well. It's a fantastic feature in this truck. With that said, one drawback of this system, I wish the cameras were a little bit easier to access. This is a huge truck, so you're often trying to find the cameras in order to park in a spot, and it's a little difficult to get to them. You got to go to the home screen, then tap on the camera icon, where most automakers will leave the camera icon fixed around the side of the screen so you can easily tap on it to see the cameras. Now, with that said, once you get to the cameras, these are some of the very best in the entire business. They're very crisp, they show a lot of different angles, and you can toggle through all of that very easily, quick to respond. Even in the base model work truck, it's an excellent camera system. Now, one thing worth pointing out regarding this infotainment system, the headlight control is integrated into the screen. You can see it here up at the top. This is how you turn on your headlights, which may cause some controversy. Most people prefer a switch over on the side, but here it's in the screen. Now, one piece of good news, the climate controls have not been integrated into the screen. So they're their own separate buttons and dials down below. You don't have to go into the screen, into any menus to adjust your climate. It's all down here, old school, which obviously makes it a little bit easier with traditional buttons. Now, moving on to the other screen in this interior, the gauge cluster screen directly behind the steering wheel. This one is, I would say, fine, but not exactly great. It's a nice, crisp, high-quality screen, and it's large enough, but it's not particularly configurable. You can make it show you various different things, but not really enough. For instance, there's no way to display the navigation map in this gauge cluster screen, which there should be. You also can't display multiple things at once, so you can't see like the music you're listening to and the map, or the music and some vehicle information. You got to scroll through and kind of decide, which to me defeats the purpose of having a screen like this. You can make it so configurable, and yet this one falls a little bit short. Now, the gauge cluster screen is all controlled using these buttons on the side of the steering wheel, and it's worth pointing out a few other interesting items with the steering wheel. For one thing, there are buttons behind the wheel that you can use to adjust the volume over on the right side, and the track you're listening to or the radio station on the left, which is a pretty cool touch. These hidden buttons add to the steering wheel controllability. One thing you won't find on the steering wheel, controls for an advanced driver assist system. You get adaptive cruise control, so it'll slow down and speed up, but it doesn't do auto steering even at this price point. Again, a little bit of a drawback. One other interesting thing that this truck doesn't have is a start-stop button. You climb inside with the key in your pocket, it recognizes that, and as soon as you put your foot on the brake, the truck is on. If you want to turn it off, just take your foot off the brake, walk out, shut the door, and the truck turns off automatically. There's no button to press to turn it on or off, which is interesting. Also worth noting in this vicinity, the gear selector to shift into gears is on the column. You can see it here. Reverse is up, drive is down, neutral's in the middle, and park is a button at the end. Not a huge surprise. Column shifters are pretty common on trucks, and this one has it. And that column shifter frees up space in the center for an absolutely massive center console storage area. You can see up front a huge storage compartment in here, although interestingly, it doesn't include wireless charging. Again, this is the base model truck, so that makes some sense, but I would think that wireless phone charging would be kind of a work truck job site feature. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You do have 2 USB-C ports for charging and a cigarette lighter style outlet for, well, more charging. You also have some images here showing an old Chevy truck from 100 years ago, and then lines leading to a brand new Chevy truck, the Silverado EV, sort of showing off the heritage in kind of an Easter egg, you gotta know it's there kind of way. Now, there is even more center console storage when you lift up this lid. This is the center armrest. You lift it up and you can see an even larger area in back for even more stuff, and they are connected. You can see here they go under the cup holders in the center, so you have actual connection between in case you have some really large item that for some reason you want to put in your front center console. In addition to all of this storage, you also have storage here on the side of the front center console in the driver footwell, and the same spot over on the passenger side, even more storage. Of course, there's also great door panel storage in this truck for various different things, a wallet or paperwork, plus cups if you're drinking, in addition to the cup holders in the center. And you also have storage above the glove box. This little tray here adds additional storage, so there's really a lot of great storage options inside this truck. Beyond all that though, there's really not all that much to report because, like I mentioned, this truck is fairly stripped down. Base model, you don't really get all that much stuff. There's no sunroof, for example, in this truck, even at this price point. And I already mentioned no driver assist, no wireless cell phone charging. You don't even get heated seats in this truck, let alone cooled seats, which you don't have, or a heated steering wheel. None of that stuff in this truck. Again, a stripped down work truck version. And next up, we move on to the back seat in the Silverado EV, where again, it is very basic and Spartan back here. You have vinyl seats, as you can see, not high quality leather. You have a lot of plastic back here, textured plastic like you see in, well, work vehicles. No floor mats back here. Same deal up front. You didn't have any up there. Again, a very basic rear experience for the work truck. But one great benefit back here, it's absolutely huge. This thing, there's an enormous amount of rear seat space in this truck, more than basically any other truck that I have been in. There's an enormous amount of legroom, headroom, knee room, rear passenger room in general. You can really use this truck to chauffeur around people if that's what you want to do. It is actually quite impressive just how spacious it is back here. And although you don't have any nice screens or luxury touches, you do have a lot of charge ports. You can see on the back of the front center console 2 USB-C ports for charging devices and a household style port, which is always nice to have inside an interior for various different applications. Great to see that here in this truck as well. You also have a lot of cup holders back here. You can see several integrated into the door panel where you can put various drinks and more, again on the back of the front center console where even more cups can go. But despite that, the storage solutions in back are kind of disappointing. Specifically, when you lift up the seat bottom, you can see there is a little storage compartment back here, but it's very little. I'm not sure why it doesn't extend out further so you could have more space for putting smaller items you might not want to put in the bed. Most automakers have a much larger storage compartment down here, but for some reason not the Silverado EV. Still, at least there's something. And finally, we move on to the front trunk in the Silverado EV. Because it has no engine up here, no combustion engine taking up all this space, they can put in a front trunk for more storage, which is nice to have. The interesting thing is how you open it. There's a button on the key fob, you press it twice, or there's a button on the inside of the truck next to the steering wheel. But either way, you press and then it just unlatches. You then have to come around and open it manually the rest of the way, which is different from rivals that have a power-operated front trunk. I mention that especially because of closing it. When you go to close it, there's no button you press and it goes down. You got to actually put your hands on the trunk and close it, which is a little disappointing at the front of the truck because that's where all the debris is, all the bugs, splatter, stuff that you hit on the road. It's all on the front grille, and that's where you have to put your hands to close the trunk. It's not exactly the best scenario, but that's what you do in the work truck. I'm sure the higher-end Silverado EV models will have a power-operated front trunk. But anyway, you get in here and you can see a fairly large front trunk area, although not as large as the one in the Ford F-150 Lightning. We're missing a few cubic feet compared to that. But you do have decent space here where you can store stuff completely out of the elements, much more secure and safe compared to the truck bed. And there's a couple little storage pockets on the side where smaller items can go as well. Always nice to see this large front trunk in an EV, but especially in a pickup with an open bed, because it does give you a large space for other items you wouldn't want to put in back. All right, driving the Silverado EV. I've wanted to drive this for a long time. I first did a tour of the concept truck over a year ago, and we thought it wasn't that far off. Well, there were delays, it took a while. Hummer EV production has been very slow. And finally, this is sort of starting to show up, I guess. Now, this truck is definitely an interesting one. So I've mentioned several times that it seems expensive, and indeed it does if you look around the interior, if you think about the level of equipment, no driver assist, no wireless charging, no heated seat. I mean, 75 grand doesn't seem right. But what this truck offers that is quite impressive is its capabilities, specifically 450 miles of range. That's just amazing. I think this is probably the longest range vehicle on sale today. There's versions of the Lucid Air that can do, I think, about 450 miles, but they cost a lot more than this truck. And this is a truck for truck purposes. And so that's an interesting thing, 450 miles. Also, standard four-wheel drive and 500 horsepower and 615 pound-feet. So you have excellent performance, you have capability with four-wheel drive, and you have this amazing range. And I think it's not gonna work. I think the problem that Chevy has done with this truck is they created the base model to be all about capability, when what people really want from a truck is kind of style and panache. Like, some people will care about capability, but most truck buyers, if we're being honest, want something that looks cool and is cool. So for 75 grand, I think a lot of truck buyers would trade battery size and fast charging capability and four-wheel drive for a nicer interior, more equipment, and better, looks, like bigger wheels, that kind of thing. And I think that probably would have actually sold them more trucks. And I think Chevy made the mistake of thinking their truck buyers actually wanted a truck, when in reality, they just want something that sort of represents what a truck could be in theory. Now, I think the RST version is going to be more desirable at 107 grand with all of the benefits that it has. I think that the Hummer EV is probably not going to be as sought after when that truck comes out, given its higher price point. But I think for this work truck version, it's going to be a tough sell, because basically you're trying to sell people on immense capabilities, which really are only going to appeal to a small sliver of truck buyers, if we're honest. And you're going to be selling electric trucks to especially that type of person. People in the middle of the country who really use trucks for truck stuff, they're not yet sold on electric. And so even though this has some really impressive capabilities, for 75 grand, I think it's going to be a tough sell for those people. I gotta say, as far as the way that this truck drives, it's actually pretty impressive. You got a nice high seating position, just like you'd want from a truck. It's a relatively comfortable ride. Even for the base model works truck version, it feels nice and comfy. The seat is comfortable, even though it's a manual seat with vinyl upholstery. And frankly, I think that the steering and handling feels less floaty than what you would get in a lot of these normal body-on-frame kind of behemoth pickup trucks. And of course, then you add in quite impressive acceleration that is really something. I think there's actually a lot to like with this vehicle. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, under what circumstances would I rather have this than a Rivian? And that's a tough thing to imagine. Rivian has more power, more equipment for about the same money, and frankly, they're pretty easy to get. Rivian R1Ts, there's no longer a long waiting list. You can lease one fairly cheap. This does have the range, and for some people that's really gonna matter, I guess, but I think for a lot of people, the Rivian looks cooler, it has kind of a cooler ethos. This just blends in as a truck. I think there's actually a lot here that's good, and I think this truck has some really nice benefits to it. I really do. I'm actually kind of surprised by how much I've enjoyed driving it around. And I also kind of like how it looks, but especially in the higher trims. I think it's a little bit of a mismatch in terms of price for what you get. And while I appreciate the capability, because I tend to buy cars for their capability rather than for the look and the feel, I think most truck buyers are probably going to be a little bit different. And this is going to have a hard time selling against the Lightning and the Rivian, which for the purposes of most people offer more for less. And so that's the new 2024 Chevy Silverado EV work truck. This has big power, impressive range, a large, spacious interior, and decent technology for a base model. But pricing is substantially high, and it lacks some of the innovation that its competitors have. And I suspect not too many of these will actually fall into the hands of actual work truck buyers. Anyway, I'm glad the Silverado EV is finally here, and I'm excited to see more of them, including the RST model coming soon. And now it's time to give this truck a DougScore. And the DougScore is here, 55 out of 100, placing the Silverado EV way behind the competition. The important thing to keep in mind here, though, is that I reviewed the base-level work truck model, hence the lower scores in cool factor, comfort, quality, features, and value. This is a commercial-grade model that's not really meant to compete with the best versions of the Rivian R1T and the Cybertruck, so you have to give it a little more leeway with its score. And I assume the more expensive, more luxurious, more powerful RST model will do better when it arrives. Still, the Silverado EV feels expensive for what it is, and most importantly, it's way late to the electric pickup party, which already seems like it's starting to lose some steam.